Part 65. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 641. Report to the leader. We found traces of a fight near the water. Leader, there is a big hole here. There is also. Let me go. Why are there so many pitfalls? Humans and animals have a common characteristic, they live by water. All living things are born from water, and living things can survive far longer without eating than without drinking water. Water is the source of life. With water, there is hope of living. At night, the pursuing humans also arrived at this small lake and found a messy lakeshore, as if it had been blown up by a bomb, with large and small potholes everywhere. A step too late again. There was indeed a big fight here a few hours ago. We knew clearly that there were crocodiles in the lake, but the animals running wildly couldn't bear it anymore. The Dasha deer was the most impatient of thirst and was the first to run to the lake to drink water. The cool lake water entered his stomach, and Dasha Lu felt very refreshed. The black shadow under the lake surface quickly approached, the water splashed, and an alligator bit hard. The messy antlers on the head of Dasha deer saved its life. In ancient times, there was a device to fight against cavalry. The antlers were designed based on the antlers. The crocodile bit the antlers in one bite. Dasha Lu felt his head shake, and then he saw a crocodile rolling in the water in pain. The crocodile's bite force was amazing. With one bite, it hit the antlers and punctured several holes in its big mouth. The battle suddenly started. In the escape party, there are actually many animals that can use water, such as the grizzly bear, who is a giant player whether in the water or on land. The opponent's alligator group is also amphibious athletes. In terms of numbers, the alligator seems to be at a disadvantage, but this is not the case. Half of the dozens of escaped animals are herbivores. In the eyes of the alligator, these guys are just big moving cakes and do not pose a threat. More than a dozen alligators entrenched in the lake slowly surfaced, revealing two eerie little eyes, and surrounded them from all directions. There is a large group of food in front of you. How can it be 100% safe if you want to hunt? If nothing else, just do it. I always eat fish, and the alligator feels a little tired of it. This is a success, enough to eat for a month without having to eat the same thing. And there is a small lake behind. No matter how powerful the grizzly bear is, he would not dare to chase into the water and fight a group of alligators. As for those otters, are you kidding me, letting them hunt crocodiles in the water? The otter said, "Get away as far as you want, do you think I am sick?" In a chaotic battle, the fleeing animals saw blood for the first time, and the wounded appeared. Although the alligators are not big and are not considered ferocious crocodiles, there are enough animals. However, if you want to capture these guys first, you will probably have to pay a high price. If this continues, sooner or later there will be attrition. In terms of overall combat power, the animal army far exceeds that of the alligator, but the alligator has a way out. They crawl on the shore very quickly and are small. They often rush up to the shore like a small rocket and take a bite without waiting for other animals. When the siege came up, they turned around and fled back to the lake with their tails on their tails, waiting for the next opportunity to attack. The animals wanted to fight, but they didn't dare to chase him into the lake. Lele took a piece of thatch in her mouth, held her cheeks and thought for a while, and suddenly looked at the two pangolins and an armadillo watching the battle on the side. A small group of people stood up and stood on the rock, grinning with big fangs. Dog. They are all good at digging holes. Crocodiles are far-sighted in the water and can clearly see animals on the shore based on the refraction of light in the water, but they cannot see the movement in front of them. So under the eyes of the crocodile, a large piece of land by the lake began to tremble continuously, and a group of little digging experts quickly dug out holes of various sizes. When the crocodiles attacked again, they suffered a big loss. Before he even got close to his target, his feet were completely empty and he fell headlong into a big hole. I had just taken a bite and was about to retreat when I suddenly found that my hind leg had stepped into a small hole and couldn't pull it out. Beside the small hole, a prairie dog showed its head through another hole, grinning sinisterly at it. The crocodiles who were trapped in large and small pits were unlucky and were beaten wildly. Pandas Lele and Yingying rolled up their sleeves and went into battle in person. They neither beat nor scolded them. When they saw a crocodile trapped, they took a small run, jumped up, Lao Gao, a panda Hot Wheels, sat on it, and pushed the alligator was crushed to death. At the end of the battle, due to a timely change of strategy, some of the animal army was injured, but there was no reduction in numbers. Animals have their own way of communicating with each other. The crocodile was also subdued and went to the river to catch fish for the new brothers and sisters to eat. This time, the two pandas did not feel in danger. No matter how smart they were, they would not have thought that the humans behind them were still chasing them relentlessly. But the feeling of being the boss and bullying others is quite enjoyable. The two pandas realized that they were still too petty before. I finally managed to escape and come to a world full of animals. Is it just to find a quiet little place to spend the rest of my life? No, 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 a panda's life should not be spent like this. When I lie in the bamboo forest, accompanied by the breeze, and recall my life, I will not regret for wasting my years, nor will I feel ashamed for doing nothing. When the panda was dying, it could be said that my entire life and all my energy were dedicated to the most magnificent cause in the history of animals, fighting for dominance over the entire Kinling Mountains. If you don't give up the immediate survival, how can you grasp the distant and the poetry? I have a dream. Yingying and Lele decided at the same time to continue the march. Sweep across the Kinling Mountains. Strategically despise the enemy, but tactically, you must take the enemy seriously. The battle just now made them discover a problem. There were too few capable Navy troops under their command. The Otter brothers could catch fish, but it was basically unreliable to expect them to fight in the water. Recruit, recruit. A total of 12 Yangtze alligators were recruited into the team. The Lynx Sun family looked at the new Yangtze alligator and put on an attitude of "I am a veteran, you newcomers, please be sensible to me," and circled around the Yangtze alligator. The Yangtze alligator had committed countless crimes and had long forgotten the group of big cats that had escaped from its mouth. It looked at these big cats in confusion. After eating a little, the expanding animal army continued to move forward. Many of them were used to being active at night, and they were in high spirits at this time, carrying their companions who were used to being active during the day and sleeping at night on their backs. A few days later, Su Ming got the news. The pursuit team tracked the traces of the animals all the way, constantly circling in the Kinling Mountains. At the deepest point, they went almost 40 kilometers deep. In the end, they ran out of ammunition and food, and several people had a fever, so they had to withdraw from the mountains. According to the clues they provided, they encountered several places with traces of fighting along the way. It seems that the escaped animals and the native animals of Kinling Mountains had fought several battles. Xiao Su, why don't you lead the team to take a look? The leader of the investigation team personally found Su Ming. Okay, I'll set off immediately. Su Ming meant it. What are these guys doing? Dividing line. According to the survey, the gifts received by unmarried women on the 4 major festivals of birthdays, Valentine's Day, Chinese Valentine's Day and Christmas are equivalent to about 1 month's salary of local white-collar workers on average, with no upper limit. This is a salary of 13 months a year, so envious. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 642. Su Ming didn't know what the animals led by the panda were doing, but he was very clear about the main work arrangements of the TV inspection team on the other side of the ocean every day. The destination of the inspection team was Hollywood, the headquarters of Disney Studios, located outside Los Angeles, California, on the west coast of the United States. The filming of Zootopia was carried out at Universal Studios near Hollywood. The inspection team led by CAI-Liming learned the entire filming process with the crew of Disney Studios every day. No matter how busy he was, CAI-Liming would arrange for someone to write a 3-day work content and post-work plan outline every 3 days and send it to Su-Ming by email, and at the same time attach a very detailed worksheet attachment for each person in the inspection team. When a general is away from home, he may not obey military orders. This is only half of the story. Generals leading troops outside can decide strategies and tactics based on actual conditions, but they must never hide it from their bosses. The company paid for this large group of people to go out for gilding. CAI-Liming had to let Su-Ming know what was going on. Su-Ming admired CAI-Liming for this. The more he asked for instructions and reported, the more Su-Ming trusted this person. As for whether Su-Ming reads those specific reports or not, and how often he reads them, that is Su-Ming's business. The boss may not read them, but the subordinates must report. Su-Ming read the report several times and was quite satisfied with the work of the inspection team. The top talents of Daewon film industry who went there this time either chose a specific technology that they were interested in or good at, such as camera, screenwriting, and post-production, and specialized in it to become technical elites. Some chose a certain field and have the tendency to develop into management talents in the future. In addition to working during the day, following the Disney teachers they secretly selected to learn skills, this group of young people also worked very hard after work. Hollywood is close to Los Angeles, and there are many world-famous attractions around it. There are stars all over the streets. It is definitely a world of flowers. These young people who have just graduated from school did not spend their minds on the world of flowers and spend their time shopping and strolling because this trip was paid for by the company. The headquarters of the 8 major film and television companies in the United States are all in Hollywood. The Universal Studios where the filming takes place is similar to the Hongdian Film and Television City in China. Almost 24 hours a day, various major companies are reshooting. The young Daewon employees seized every minute and every opportunity to absorb film knowledge and skills like a sponge. It seems that these young employees understood what he said to them at the airport that day. There was only one exception. Little Fairy Li Wanting. According to the description in the report, after Li Wanting arrived in Hollywood, she became a social butterfly. In just 2 days, she became familiar with Disney Pictures from producers to the most basic stage managers. A week later, people from several major local companies almost all knew that a hot Chinese beauty had come to Universal Studios. She spent most of her time on socializing and entertaining, and almost every night, she would go to various cocktail parties in the Hollywood film and television circles. Su-Ming was not dissatisfied with this little fairy because of this. On the contrary, he had a deeper impression of her. Because the person who specifically handled the work report every 3 days was the little fairy Li Wanting. In the unit, what kind of people are most likely to get opportunities? Hardworking. Strong ability. Beautiful. Flattering. All, and none. The easiest way to get an opportunity is to leave the deepest impression on the leader. As for how to leave a deep impression on the leader and be favored by the leader? There are many specific methods, such as hard work, ability, appearance, flattery. Snakes have their own ways, rats have their own ways, and the little fairy has her own set of magic, and it seems very successful at present. She has met Su-Ming several times, and each time she has left a deep impression on Su-Ming in different ways. What's more rare is that she has turned herself into a book that can be read for a long time. Every time you read it, the impression will be deeper and the feeling will be different. Moreover, she seems to know Su-Ming's taste very well, and never uses methods that Su-Ming is annoyed. Occasionally, when Su-Ming shows a little dissatisfaction, she will immediately stop and turn around. Monster Su-Ming smiled. A little fairy with good talent and worth cultivating may be a big monster who can become a Buddha and an ancestor, and become an immortal in the future. A saint appears once every 500 years. Such a big monster is also very rare. Once it appears, there will be a lot of turmoil. Of course, there are many talented people, but most geniuses die halfway. The little fairy Li Wanting seems to be growing up smoothly and seems to have found her own stage, but whether she can successfully overcome the tribulation and achieve the right result depends on her luck. 7 points depend on hard work, and 3 points are destined by fate. It is a mean behavior to be jealous of others' goodness and intelligence. A boss with real vision and ambition is never afraid of excellent employees under his subordinates, but only afraid of mediocrity. Before leaving for the mountains, Su Ming responded to the work content and plan that CAI asked Li Wanting to write for the first time. 2 simple sentences. The first sentence, everyone has worked hard, and the overseas allowance has doubled. The second sentence, a special approval of $50,000 will be used specifically for Li Wanting's social entertainment expenses, which will be specifically responsible for by Mr. CAI, and Li Wanting can directly ask Mr. CAI for advance payment and reimbursement. The first sentence is an affirmation of everyone. The last sentence, on the surface, was a reward for Li Wanting, but the money was not given directly to Li Wanting, but was put in CAI hands. Although Li Wanting had no difficulty in taking it, it showed Su Ming's attitude. He supported the behavior of developing connections in Hollywood, not because of any close personal relationship with Li Wanting herself. $50,000 is public funds. After sending this email, Su Ming called Su Meng, made some arrangements, and prepared to go into the mountains to find animals. Technology changes life. A few minutes later, CAI, who was in the United States, received Su Ming's email approval. The whole inspection team was in high spirits. The allowance doubled, which was one reason, but more importantly, it was affirmed by the big leaders in China. People all have a desire to show off. No one wants to work hard for the company, but the leader knows nothing about it. This reward email is to tell everyone clearly that your efforts are clearly seen by the company and will be rewarded. As for the doubling of allowances, it was really secondary. According to their current work intensity, they had no time to spend the money. At this time, the advantage of a general is not subject to military orders was revealed. Old CAI made the decision to give everyone a rotating leave, and each person had a whole day to let them go out and have fun. There was only one thing, and it was necessary to show the Chinese rich style in Hollywood. As long as it was not something that was ridiculously expensive, if you liked it, there was only one word: buy it. No bargaining allowed, no trying without buying, no buying less. If the money was not enough, a part of the public funds for this trip would be used to subsidize it. Most people thought that Mr. CAI was joking, but in fact he was commending everyone's efforts during this period. Only Li Wanting knew that what old CAI said was 50% true and 50% false. How to let Hollywood know that there was a Daowin film and television in China as quickly as possible. A group of small local tyrants made large purchases in addition to filming. This was definitely the most convenient way. Although it might not leave a good impression on people, it was undoubtedly the most efficient. Besides, not all celebrities in Hollywood are as high class as imagined. There are many people who are uncultured, love to show off their wealth, are proud of spending a lot of money, and are ashamed of being frugal. Li Wanting applied for $15,000 that day and bought a set in a high-end specialty store on Sunset Boulevard. A pair of teardrop diamond earrings, a slim evening dress, and a pair of Cayenne Mark satin high heels. Just this pair of shoes cost $6,200. With Su Ming's understanding, the little fairy in the mirror has already seen an international style. Beautiful lady, you will be the most dazzling oriental diamond in tonight's party. The person who invited Li Wanting to attend tonight's party was Peter Jackson, a famous Hollywood director who made his mark with the low-cost horror film The Dead and became famous for the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Jackson's recent filming is currently being filmed at Universal Studios. He met Lee Wanting this morning. Less than 5 hours later, he was deeply fascinated by this girl from the East and invited her to attend the party held tonight by the legendary Hollywood producer Bruckheimer, who filmed the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy, in a private mansion in Beverly Hills. Seeing Lee Wanting walk out of the fitting room, the eyes of the bearded Peter Jackson were like two big light bulbs. As for women, there is no woman who is not vain. Vanity is not a disease. As long as it is controlled within a certain range, it is a good pleasure in life. Although she has received countless compliments since coming to Hollywood, Lee Wanting can't help but feel a little proud of being able to fascinate a super director like Jackson. In addition to being proud, she was also a little indignant. Even world-class directors are like this, but they have been repeatedly defeated in front of a small boss of a Chinese film and television company. This Su Ming is not particularly rich, and he may not be very famous. At least in Hollywood, there are too many people who are richer and more famous than him. But why do I seem to be controlled by him? It's really a ghost. The thought flashed through my mind, but my brain didn't stop at all. I covered my mouth and chuckled, "Mr. Spencer, your words don't seem to be politically correct." Jackson, who usually doesn't smile in front of many big-name directors, was stunned. It took more than 10 seconds before he came to his senses and said quickly, "Haha, to be honest, even compared with those Western female stars I know, you are still the most dazzling. I'm really sorry, I definitely don't mean to be racist. Please forgive my verbal mistakes." "I'm glad you think so," Lee Wanting shrugged. "Unfortunately, your employees seem to think that our Darwin film and television people are interfering with their work and not letting us get close to the filming side of your movie. Haha, this must be a misunderstanding, treating them as ordinary tourists. I personally welcome all colleagues to come to exchange and learn. Tomorrow I will tell the crew not to stop Eastern colleagues from visiting and filming." Jackson opened the car door for Lee Wanting very gracefully. "You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 643. Lee Wanting nodded slightly in thanks and got into the back seat of Jackson's Rolls-Royce. Jackson followed and got in, sitting face to face with Lee Wanting. Strictly speaking, the two had not known each other for a long time, not more than 10 hours so far, and the total number of words they had said was perhaps less than 30. But Jackson felt that this woman from the East had a very special charm. Lee Wanting was certainly beautiful, but not necessarily more attractive than the Hollywood actresses Jackson had seen. Exoticism was one reason, and another important reason was that this Oriental woman had a very special temperament that made people want to get close to her. Well, how should I put it? Yes, like a magnet. Whether it was a casual word, a look, or a movement, it exuded attraction. Whether in the East or the West, there are such women. Such women never make any excessive demands on people, so you never know what she wants, and you can only willingly offer everything you have. Of course, Jackson didn't write a check for Lee Wanting that included all his net worth, but he would definitely support her to the best of his ability in order to make her smile. He would tell her everything he knew. The Rolls-Royce slowly drove into Sunset Boulevard, and Jackson took the initiative to introduce the party tonight. Hollywood is close to Los Angeles. It is a coastal scenic spot, a prosperous area, and the headquarters of the American film industry. There are countless stars and celebrities in the film and television industry. When people of the same level gather in one place, they will inevitably form various circles, and as long as there are circles, there will inevitably be gatherings to make friends and keep in touch. Many huge businesses are also mixed in parties. In the Hollywood circle, there are almost always gatherings, and parties are held all the time. Today it is a famous actor, tomorrow it is a producer, and the day after tomorrow it is a director. The convener of today's party, Jerry Bruckheimer, can be said to be a legendary producer in Hollywood. His representative works include the Pirates of the Caribbean series, the National Treasure series, and the Chronicles of Narnia series. Coincidentally, Bruckheimer works for Disney Pictures. Of course, compared with Spencer, the producer of Zootopia, which is currently being filmed, Bruckheimer is at a higher level and is one of the major giants of Disney Pictures. The attendees tonight are also celebrities from all walks of life, among whom at least 4 or 5 have won Oscars. According to common sense, this level of party is not open to everyone. If there is no introducer with enough weight, even the rich will be turned away. The Darwin Film and Television Observation Group certainly does not have this qualification, not even the leader Cai Liming. In fact, even when Cai Liming was at Hwashi Film, he did not attend such a party. He could only go to the kind of newcomer party that started to show his talent in Hollywood through a certain film. No matter which country, beautiful women always have some privileges. There is no way, this is something that cannot be envied. After listening to Jackson's introduction, Lee Wanting said noncommittally, "I hope all Hollywood filmmakers can be as hospitable as you." Jackson blinked, "Oh, hospitable. As long as they still have normal aesthetics, they will not ignore a beauty like you. Thank you for your compliment. If it were in the East, I would feel embarrassed." Lee Wanting smiled faintly and glanced at a sidewalk passing by the car window. Hollywood Walk of Fame. The Hollywood Walk of Fame, a sidewalk stretching along Hollywood Boulevard and Vine Street in Hollywood, extends from Gower Street in the east to La Brea Avenue in the west, and then connects to Sunset Boulevard. On the Walk of Fame, there are more than 2,000 star medals inlaid with the names of celebrities honored by the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce to commemorate their contributions to the entertainment industry. Each star is made of a terrazzo, which is made into a pink 5-pointed star and inlaid with bronze and then embedded in a dark gray square. Unless occasionally relocated due to nearby construction or other reasons, the position of the star medals on the avenue is permanent. Seeing the avenue of stars flashing by, Lee Wanting suddenly thought of Su Ming's shadow again. Hollywood, where people are fascinated by money and luxury, is not the most famous attraction here, but the 9 white characters standing on the back of the Hollywood Hills, which have become the symbol of Hollywood, Hollywood. Compared with the 9 characters that are 13 meters high, the more than 2,000 small medals on the Avenue of Stars are not conspicuous. At least in the minds of tourists and ordinary people, those 9 characters represent dazzling Hollywood stars. When seeing those 9 characters, world-renowned names will emerge in their minds, such as Marlon Brando, Monroe, Al Pacino, and the young actress who could not bear the pressure and jumped off the D and committed suicide. And those more than 2,000 small medals are unknown to most people in the world of ordinary people. After coming to Hollywood and integrating into the circle, Lee Wanting realized that the owners of those more than 2,000 small medals were the big figures behind the scenes who truly dominated Hollywood, dominated the film and television industry in the Western world, and even influenced the US government. A few months ago, Lee Wanting felt that she could only become Hollywood in her life, and maybe she would jump off a tall building like the actress back then. But Su Ming gave her a chance to choose, to become one of the seemingly unknown real upper classes on the Avenue of Stars. Rolls-Royce quickly left the small town of Hollywood and came to the foot of Beverly Hills, moving slowly along the winding mountain road. The city of Hollywood itself has actually shown signs of decline. Many celebrities and tycoons have moved out of Hollywood and moved to nearby Beverly Hills, making it the most luxurious and wealthy residential area in Los Angeles. In 1912, with the boom of the film industry moving westward, Beverly Hills was gradually developed into a celebrity residential area with green trees, winding paths, and luxurious and secretive. Beverly Hills has a permanent population of about 32,000, which is the area with the highest density of stars and celebrities in the world. Many world-famous brokerage agencies and production companies are also located here. There are no slums here. The blocks are neatly planned, the trees are scattered, and each street has a different tree species. You can feel the birdsong and the fragrance of flowers all year round. Among these 23,000 people, there are nearly 600 professional doctors, 250 psychiatrists, and 110 psychological counseling experts, which shows the living standards. Several famous Chinese movie stars have private villas in Beverly Hills. Li Wanting even saw Chen Long's private villa with her own eyes. This villa looks very ordinary in the whole Beverly Hills. The place where Bruckheimer held the party was located in a private villa in his luxury area in the north of the mountain. From the outside, the villa is full of ancient Roman style. The huge white columns support an arched gate that is large enough for 4 or 5 cars to enter in parallel. On the lawn in the yard, 2 purebred Andalusian race horses were leisurely walking with the groom. At the party, Li Wanting saw many familiar faces that could only be seen in TV and movies. Angelina Jolie, Johnny Depp, Will Smith, and Keanu Reeves, who was pregnant, full of beard, and in a state of desolation. This uncle and another debt-ridden bad movie king Nicolas Cage were talking and laughing unscrupulously by the swimming pool, and a bottle of strong liquor on the table was almost empty. "Oh, beautiful Oriental girl, does China need Hollywood stars?" Nicholas drank a little too much, and laughed at Li Wanting, who was passing by, and said, "As long as the pay is enough, I don't mind acting in bad movies." These two uncles once had a glorious past, and their acting skills did not decline due to external factors, but became more and more superb. However, the United States is a realistic place, and the heavy debt makes them breathless. In order to pay off their debts, they have starred in a lot of bad movies in recent years. Keanu Reeves, with his big belly, laughed and said, "Count me in, but the pay can't be lower than Cage's." Jackson, who was accompanying Li Wanting, looked slightly depressed. Just as he was about to say something, Li Wanting smiled slightly, picked up the bottle next to the beach chair, refilled the wine for the two uncles, poured a small half-cup for herself, shook the wine glass gently at the two, and said with a smile, "China doesn't only have bad movies. At least our company boss never bothers to make bad movies." "Who is your company?" Keanu Reeves was stunned and asked. They both knew that this was a big beauty from the film and television industry from the East, but they didn't know which company she was from. "Douyin Pictures," Li Wanting smiled. The two uncles looked at each other and showed a confused look. In Hollywood, Su Ming's Douyin Pictures is really not famous. The investor of horror Zootopia, Jackson reminded lightly. "Oh," this time Keanu Reeves was obviously enthusiastic, and sat up straight from the beach chair. "I've seen that magical movie, it's impeccable. If I have to say what the shortcomings are, I can only say that it lacks a male protagonist with outstanding acting skills and appearance. If we compare it according to the standards of young mature women and old mature women, Keanu Reeves belongs to the young uncle, Nicolas Cage belongs to the old uncle, and the protagonist of Zootopia is relatively young, which is obviously not suitable for Cage." Seeing Keanu Reeves's look of "obviously, I am the male protagonist with outstanding acting skills and appearance," Li Wanting smiled but said nothing, but her eyes fell on his big belly covered with chest hair. Cough, cough, cough. Keanu Reeves was almost choked, coughed a few times, and said a little embarrassedly, "Well, as a professional actor, losing weight is not a difficult thing." Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 644. Never underestimate a truly talented person, even when he is down, because you never know whether these people will be able to make a comeback overnight one day in the future. Nicolas Cage and Keanu Reeves are such people. Even if they have nothing and are full of debts, their true value has never faded. On the contrary, due to the tempering and accumulation of life, they have become more profound and layered. Therefore, even if they are down and out, they are still qualified to attend a dinner of this level today. People with real vision in Hollywood know that what they lack is just a good opportunity. Of course, no matter where you are, there are only a few people who are truly discerning, and the majority are still snobbery. Therefore, the two former Hollywood movie kings did not receive the treatment of the stars. Instead, they felt sympathy for each other. They drank and chatted alone by the pool, and looked at the girls in bikinis playing in the pool with fascination. In this kind of situation, a truly high-end actress would not wear too revealing clothing to swim in the pool. These girls in the water are either third or fourth-tier starlets, or they are simply call girls who pay to have a lively atmosphere. It was also because of this that Lee Wanting had the opportunity to chat with these two people alone. The two parties simply exchanged business cards, and Jackson took Lee Wanting into the villa to attend the real dinner. "A very interesting woman," Keanu Reeves said, holding a rose-rimmed business card from Wanting Lee's Douyin Pictures. "This kind of woman is difficult to deal with. Jackson likes to do such challenging things." Nicholas shrugged. "I'm not interested in women now, I just want to make money." Keanu Reeves put away his business card and turned to ask, "If there is really a movie to be filmed in the East, will you go?" "Why not? Don't you think Hollywood is becoming more and more boring?" Nicholas said. As Jackson introduced, Lee Wanting's popularity at the dinner was almost as good as that of several well-known Hollywood actresses who came with her that day. Lee Wanting knew almost everyone she could meet. During the second half of the dinner, Jackson's owner, legendary Disney producer Bruckheimer, went to the study on the third floor. He had some confidential company matters to discuss, and Lee Wanting's status made it inconvenient to participate. "Hey, I really don't understand why Jackson is willing to leave such a gorgeous beauty to talk about boring numbers with that boring guy Bruckheimer." A bearded man came over and raised his wine glass towards Lee Wanting. He was very unfamiliar. She had never seen him before when he was introduced. Lee Wanting thought he was here to strike up a conversation, but when she saw that he had brought a female companion, she knew that she had guessed wrong. Although the bearded man is unfamiliar, this female companion looks familiar. Film and television, film and television. When Lee Wanting was in China, in her spare time, in addition to shopping like all girls, she also liked to watch American TV series. The bearded female companion is not tall, has a small round face, smiles before she speaks, and has a figure that is not particularly bad. She looks like she has baby fat. "Daenerys Targaryen," Lee Wanting blurted out. The chubby woman in front of her is exactly one of the heroines of the most popular American TV series in recent years, A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones. Dragon Mother of. But as soon as she said these words, Lee Wanting realized that she had made a mistake. Daenerys Targaryen was the name of the character she played, not her real name. In this case, it didn't matter if she didn't recognize the other person, but calling her by the wrong name, but it is a very rude thing. "I'm so sorry. The only thing to blame is that the characters in this American TV series are too famous." In the middle, this little chubby girl has a series of titles that are as tongue-twisting as in a magic game, including Queen of the Undulls, Roiner and the First Men, Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, Queen, Wardens, Khaleesi of the Great Grass Sea, Breaker of Chains, Queen of Mirian, Princess of Dragonstone, Unburnt, Mother of Dragons, Daenerys Born of the Storm, and many more. Each title represents according to a legend. Lee Wanting can almost recite all her titles verbatim, but she can't remember the actor's real name. "As an actor, I hope everyone can remember my role rather than me." The little fat girl smiled heartily. "Of course, my real name is Emilia Clarke, and my friends all call me Amy. This handsome bearded gentleman is the executive vice president of HBO, Mr. Rivaldo." Of course, Wanting Lee of HBO TV network knows that American cable network media company, a subsidiary of Time Warner Group, broadcasts entertainment programs such as movies, music, documentaries, and sports events around the clock. It is the only company in the world that does not sell advertising and only relies on the total number of subscribers to TV companies subscribed by users has reached 35 million, accounting for 90% of the US pay TV channel market. Black. Tao Family, Color. The most popular American dramas such as Sex and the City and Game of Thrones are all produced by HBO. It's a great honor to meet you too. Lee Wanting winked at the chubby girl Amy and made up for her discourtesy in a joking way. From a personal point of view, I am definitely your loyal fan. Then I want to tell you a secret. I like sleep movie fans very much, the little fat girl said seriously. Lee Wanting was stunned. Haha. Of course, that's if the movie fans are willing, the little fat girl laughed. Lee Wanting pretended to be frightened and patted her chest. This action caused her chest to shake, making the little chubby girl's eyes light up. Lee Wanting did not ignore Rivaldo and asked, "Mr. Vice President, can you give me a spoiler? Is Jon Snow dead?" Rivaldo laughed. "Last week, I was speeding and was stopped by a patrolman in Utah. He told me that if I answered the same question, he would let me go." Beautiful lady, if you want to know the spoiler, you have to be sincere, right? I don't have the power to enforce the law, Lee Wanting said with a smile. Are you interested in playing a guest role in the next season? In the next season, there will be a peerless beauty who triggered the War of the Four Countries. We have been looking for a long time and have not found a suitable black-haired beauty. There are not many scenes, so it shouldn't take up too much of your time. The relevant scenes will probably start shooting at the end of the year. Jon Snow's mother? But I am an Oriental. Lee Wanting was stunned. This is the advantage of magic dramas, and we have highly skilled makeup artists, Rivaldo said with a smile. Then I must ask my company first, Lee Wanting said. Of course. Today is a gathering of the film industry. These two HBO celebrities don't have much interaction with people in the circle, so they chat with Lee Wanting in the corridor. As they talked about Chinese movies and TV. HBO does not rely on selling advertisements, but on user subscriptions. It has developed into the leading TV station in the United States. It can make TV series like blockbuster movies. Its strength is unquestionable. According to Su Ming's development route of quality first, HBO is undoubtedly an excellent mentor. International integration, in fact, I don't quite understand why Chinese filmmakers always like to use this word. Rivaldo shrugged and said, in HBO's view, whether it is making a movie or a TV series, the essence is to tell a story. The story is good and the characters are exciting. Whether it is the East or the West, there are very good stories. Why must it be in line with the so-called international standards? Values, Lee Wanting asked. Maybe, but truly positive values must be universal and understandable to normal humans, and do not need to be aligned. Rivaldo said affirmatively, excuse me, I have seen some Chinese movies that are so-called aligned with the international standards, but I feel that, they do not seem to understand the true meaning of alignment. As HBO has always believed, in the West, our core is not exaggerated special effects, large-scale explosions, and all kinds of dazzling high-tech. These things are just for the plot. For example, when filming the first season of Game of Thrones, we basically spent no money on special effects. Because the story is good, the audience likes it, and the market response is enthusiastic, so we started to spend a lot of money on special effects from the second season. A good story is the foundation, and technology is the icing on the cake. On the contrary, no matter how much money you spend, the market will not buy it. If you have to, the first thing to connect is the concept of the film, to make a good story, not the special effects. Lee Wanting nodded. What is a good story? Of course, the subject matter should be novel. But no matter how novel the subject matter is, it cannot be separated from the soil of reality. We are not interested in things without roots. A good story is that a talented professional screenwriter finds the maximum value that can touch the hearts of the audience on the basis of an extraordinary story. Unfortunately, the few Chinese blockbusters I have seen are all based on the tradition of Chinese culture, but the plot is too primitive, and I don't see where their roots are. Li Wanting thought about it and asked a very bold question: what do you think of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon? Before going together, I shouldn't ask such a clear question with praise and criticism, not to mention that all the people in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon are old predecessors of Douyin film and television. But Li Wanting feels that there must be a clear benchmark and comparison to figure out the right direction for the future. Rivaldo pondered for a while and said, "The box office will tell you all the answers. I think the box office of this movie is very good, but it has not reached the height it should have." He raised his glass to Li Wanting and smiled. Audiences all over the world are looking forward to good stories. Good stories are scarce all over the world. In the eyes of Western film and television people, the East is not only a huge box office, but also a treasure trove of endless good stories. If you don't dig it yourself, sooner or later, people in Hollywood will dig it. Li Wanting's heart was slightly shocked. In the Game of Thrones, the Great Wall that runs through the whole play and plays a major role blocked the invasion of the northern barbarians. Its creativity came entirely from the Great Wall of China. At this moment, for the first time in her life, she felt the responsibility that an Eastern film and television person should bear. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 645. After the dinner, Li Wanting took Jackson's Rolls-Royce back to Hollywood. When passing by a famous local hotel, Jackson suddenly said, "I have some shares in this hotel. I have opened a suite all year round. When I go back to Hollywood, I stay here. Miss Li, are you interested in going up for a cup of coffee?" Li Wanting smiled and took off the lace glove on her right hand calmly. There was a shallow but very obvious mark on the ring finger of her right hand. "Are you married?" Jackson said unexpectedly. Li Wanting did not comment and said, "I admire you as a real gentleman." Jackson's mouth moved slightly, and he shook his head with a bitter smile. "I am rude, please forgive my abruptness." After returning to the hotel where the inspection team was, the first thing Li Wanting did was to find a copper ring worthless from the drawer and put it on her ring finger. The film and television industry has a chaotic side, which is no different in China and abroad, but the real cases of bullying are still rare. If you want to make connections in Hollywood, you must have some means of self-protection, such as wearing a fake wedding ring when you are alone, leaving a mark on your finger. In the United States, with a Christian tradition, this ring mark can politely refuse many people's invitations. Of course, this kind of thing is to guard against gentlemen, not villains. Fortunately, Li Wanting is a member of the Chinese inspection team after all, and has a layer of protective aura. At the same time, her purpose is not to beg someone to climb up, but to make as many connections as possible. Although she has encountered some invitations to go to the room and coffee alone, most of them can be rejected without losing face for both parties. After taking a shower, Li Wanting carefully put away the evening dress, earrings, and high heels she bought. She sat in front of the computer and thought for a while, and decided to report the situation of today's dinner to Su Ming separately by email. No matter how capable she is still a girl in her early 20s who has just graduated from school. When she has something proud and has made achievements, she always can't help but show off and show it to people who have an important position in her heart. This is business, Li Wanting took a deep breath and told herself in her heart. Her 10 fingers were like the wind, and they were typing quickly on the keyboard, writing down the contact with the 2 celebrity uncles, the conversation with the vice president of HBO, and the various people she met at the dinner. When she finally thought of the trivial matter of drinking coffee, she hesitated for a long time, but couldn't help writing. After sending the email, she looked at the time. It should be morning in China now, and Su Ming should be online at this time. This was her first time to report to Su Ming alone. According to her understanding of Su Ming as a boss, whether it was for the content of the report, to encourage employees, or even to criticize her for reporting beyond her level, he would quickly reply with a simple email. Then she sat in front of the computer and waited. Time passed little by little, and Li Wanting refreshed the web page for a while, but there was no new email notification on the computer. Her eyelids gradually began to become heavy, and sleepiness surged. I don't know how long it took, but when I opened my eyes, the sky outside the window was already white, and it was almost dawn. I was sleeping so soundly on the sofa that my saliva was flowing out. Finally, 3 new emails came to the mailbox. Li Wanting sucked her saliva and quickly clicked them one by one. One was an advertisement, one was the work arrangement of the inspection team for today, and one was a local travel guide. Why don't you just die? Li Wanting was furious. Su Ming had a good reason not to reply to the email, just as Li Wanting thought, if he saw it, he would definitely reply. But the problem was that when Li Wanting sent the email, he had already led people into the mountains and didn't see the email at all. This time, the team going into the mountains was very streamlined, with only Su Ming and Su Meng, 2 wild boar mounts, and food and water. In the mountains full of animals, Su Ming had nothing to be afraid of. The main reason for bringing Su Meng was that he felt a little lonely on the road alone, and he had an extra companion. He could also let Su Meng help carry the luggage and act as a coolie. Before leaving, he was stopped by the long-legged Russian girl Ludmila. "Why don't you take me with you?" Ludmila stood in front of Su Ming, half a head taller than Su Ming, very imposing. She crossed her arms, her big eyes narrowed into a slit, flashing a dangerous light. After returning from Suntown last time, Su Ming intended to build a professional security team. He contacted Moran International through Ludmila and paid a high price to hire a group of professional bodyguard trainers from Moran International. This name is not made up by Su Ming, Nima really has this profession. There are 6 people in total, including experts in grappling and fighting, weapons experts, transportation experts, modern equipment experts, emergency negotiation experts, and security planners. Each person charges between $6,000 and $10,000 per month. The leader of the team was actually the head of Moran International in Iraq, Ms. Ludmila. Before retiring, she had the rank of major. "Why should I take you with me?" Su Ming widened his eyes. "If anything happens to you under my watch, Moran International will lose its reputation," Ludmila said. "Beautiful lady, don't forget, I paid you to help me train lure bodyguards, not to be my bodyguards." Su Ming had an expression of big sister. "Can you please stop harassing me at the slightest opportunity?" After Ludmila came to the zoo, she had asked him to have coffee alone several times. Once, even in the office, taking advantage of the opportunity when no one was around, she raised her long legs above her head, pressed them on her shoulders, and pushed herself against the wall. "I've seen unrestrained people, but I've never seen such unrestrained people. Besides, I have bodyguards." Su Ming pointed at Su Meng behind him. "Can you beat him?" In the competition of shooting and cannon, Su Meng is definitely not as good as Ludmila. This girl can break a wine glass with one shot without aiming at a distance of 30 meters, but compared to hand-to-hand combat in the jungle, unless Ludmila is a real human-shaped female bear, she is definitely not Su Meng's opponent. Su Meng and her cannot be regarded as the same kind of creatures at all. Ludmila finally failed to go. Su Ming was afraid that this overly generous girl would rape him in the mountains. According to the information given by the first batch of search personnel, Su Ming took Su Meng and entered the kindling branch from the foot of the mountain near the airport. After entering the mountain, Su Ming did not immediately use all his mental power to search the area in a radar-like manner. This large-scale scan consumes too much mental power, and with his current strength, he could not maintain it for long. He carried 6 energy storage balls for transformation abilities, a pot of water, and a can of royal jelly. After walking about 3 or 4 kilometers in the rugged mountains, he discovered a very strange problem. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 646. Along the way, I didn't find any animals at all. Although he did not deliberately expand his mental power to the maximum extent, for the sake of safety, Su Ming always maintained a mental power coverage within a radius of dozens of meters to prevent any blind guy from secretly attacking him. If a venomous snake or a wolf were to suddenly attack him, Su Ming would not necessarily be afraid. He could use his mental power and transformed energy storage balls with just a thought. But with Su Ming here, the guy who makes a sneak attack will most likely be in bad luck, and will most likely be killed directly. It was a bit exaggerated for Su Ming to kill a cow with one punch, but it was quite easy to cripple a wolf with one punch. But after going several kilometers into the mountain, Su Ming didn't find a single animal. It doesn't mean that there are no animals at all, it means slightly larger animals. Along the way, except for little guys like ants, earthworms, and sparrows, not even a rabbit or a hedgehog was found. Something is wrong. Although Yangchuan City has developed rapidly in recent years and the population has surged, many animals that are close to urban areas on the branches of the Qinling Mountains have gradually begun to move deeper into the mountains. However, in the direction of this animal escaping into the mountains, there are many animals within 10 kilometers nearby. In the countryside, except for a few villages, there is only an airport 4 kilometers away. There are few people and there should be relatively many animals. What's more, the straight line distance from the foot of the mountain is already several kilometers. Even if the edge is a city, a few kilometers is deep enough. Even the mountains next to the city will occasionally have traces of medium-sized animals such as wild boars and wolves. Let alone this deserted bird place. Animals have their own territory. A territory means a relatively stable hunting area. How could a large mountain range be left unoccupied? After walking for a while, Su Ming found a dilapidated animal nest following the marks left by the first search team in the mountain. It was the enemy that the animal army encountered for the first time, the nest of the lynx family. In addition to the traces left by a large number of humans, there are also many decayed animal limbs and bones around. It seems that some unknown story must have happened here. Su Ming wandered around the nest for a while, smelled it with his nose, touched it with his hands, and then made a few simple gestures towards Su Ming. Huh, Su Ming was slightly startled. This guy is still not very good at talking. How does he usually fall in love? Could it be that when he was with Nurse Xiaohu, he didn't need to communicate verbally and just started talking directly? He was indeed behind the times. A guy with a savage background was more open-minded than him. Su Ming didn't know that Su Ming was thinking about these messy things, so he huffed twice and pointed deeper into the jungle. What he means is that the owner of this nest has not been back for a long time, and the nest has long been abandoned. Su Ming thought to himself, could it be that the fleeing animals killed the owner of the nest? It is entirely possible. Judging from the size of the nest, although the owner is definitely not small, he may be some kind of beast. There are a huge number of animals on the run, including many beasts. There are also 2 pandas acting as dog-headed strategists, alone in the mountains. Animals are unlikely opponents. Su Ming guessed 70% or 80% correctly. The only thing he didn't expect was that the 2 pandas were not acting as dog-headed strategists, but as bosses. Let's go, keep going. Su Ming waved his hand and led Su Ming in the direction where the animal left, and continued to move forward. After it was almost dark, Su Ming and Su Meng's figures appeared on the edge of a fairly small lake. The gurgling stream flows into the lake along the rocks from a distance. The huge lake is extremely quiet and reflects faint waves under the moonlight. Something is still wrong, it's too dead here. Su Ming separated a ray of mental power into the water and spread it out like a large fishing net. The mental power followed the water waves and quickly covered the entire lake, scanning it from top to bottom like a radar. Damn it! The area of this lake is almost more than half of Shuahun Lake. The average depth is at least 2.5 meters, showing the shape of the bottom of a pot. The deepest place is even 5 or 6 meters deep. It is completely unreasonable that there are no large aquatic creatures in such a large lake, which is deep in the mountains and rarely visited by people. There were only a few fish, mostly small fish of a little bigger size, and I saw almost no fish weighing more than a pound. Deep in the mountains and old forests, humans may not have set foot here for more than 10 years. The animals are in a safe and calm environment and grow naturally. In such a large lake, fish weighing 5 or 6 pounds can only be considered ordinary. Due to environmental restrictions, it is impossible to grow a fish as large as several hundred kilograms, but it is still no problem to grow to several tens of kilograms. It's good now. The aquatic life resources of this lake seem to have been plundered. Around the lake, there are really many carcasses of big fish that have been chewed beyond recognition. Such a large water source should be able to attract animals from dozens of miles around to drink water. Su Ming decided to wait secretly by the lake. He still didn't believe it. I captured the nearby natives alive and must ask them what happened. What? Wait. Since we are setting up an ambush, we must not light a fire to avoid being discovered. Su Ming and Su Man, wearing gel coats, found 2 large pits by the river. They lay down in the pits with only half of their heads exposed, and furtively stared at the situation at the lake. Damn it, where did all these big holes come from by the lake? Su Ming was just as confused as the first search team. Could there have been a big explosion here? Time passed by, and Su Ming was about to fall asleep, and he didn't see any animals coming to drink water. Su Ming was bored on the side. He took out a mobile phone and poked on the keyboard with a thick finger. I don't know if he was sending WeChat or text messages. Is there a signal here? Su Ming was stunned. His mobile phone could not receive a signal in the afternoon. The search team encountered the same problem at the beginning. Otherwise, they could call for air support to deliver food and medical supplies to make the search more in-depth. He leaned over with a little curiosity and saw 3 identical smiling faces on Su Ming's mobile phone screen, which disappeared in a flash. You have changed. Su Ming looked at Su Ming, who was concentrating on playing games with a look of grief. It has only been a short time since a simple savage brother, who ate raw meat and drank blood, was pure and pollution-free. Less than half a year after coming down the mountain, he became addicted to mobile games. Games kill people. Su Ming thought, otherwise let Shen Yan open another team to specialize in mobile games. Don't mention it, this thing is actually quite profitable. As long as a game can meet market requirements and catch the player's excitement, according to the current speed of network transmission, it can become popular in half the world within a few days, and it can be sold to a buyer and easily earn hundreds of millions. Developing mobile game apps is the fastest way for pure technical men to rise up besides time travel. But in China, it is a bit difficult, and piracy is still rampant. Otherwise, Su Ming is already half a businessman. When he thinks of things related to making money, his brain turns quickly, and he thinks of a long list of related things in an instant. In the future, it is best to register a company overseas, do a lot of business directly overseas, and even after the group is integrated, simply go public overseas, but in this way, you need a capable person to take charge of this overseas business. At present, it seems that I really don't have such talents on hand. It is unlikely to expect Uncle Zhao Yun to go overseas to help me run around, unless his wife speaks. Talent, talent. What is the most valuable thing in the 21st century is talent. The bigger the company gets, the more Su Ming can deeply understand the meaning of the sentence. Talents are really becoming less and less. Just when Su Ming's thoughts flew to Nasdaq on the other side of the ocean, Su Ming suddenly put down his mobile phone, raised his head and stared at the lake in the distance. Finally here. Su Ming's sense of smell and hearing are much stronger than ordinary people. When Su Ming saw his movement, he knew that he had finally waited. Following his gaze, in the moonlight, there was a rustling sound in the grass more than half a person's height by the lake, and a big bird came out. The big bird was smaller than a swan and larger than a wild duck. It had gray feathers all over its body, 2 slender legs, a slightly curved but sharp beak, and a dazzling red on its head. Red-crowned crane. Su Ming squinted his eyes and took a closer look. It should not be a red-crowned crane. Red-crowned cranes are much taller than this guy, with long legs. You can tell it is a crane at a glance, while this guy in the distance looks more like a big duck. Or it could be a small red-crowned crane that has not grown up yet. Su Ming raised his eyebrows. Little friend, where are your parents? Uncle will take you to play. After the little red-crowned crane appeared from the water plants, it did not immediately go to the river to catch fish and drink water. Instead, it stayed in place and looked around furtively for more than half a minute. After confirming that there was no danger, it took courage, took small steps, and twisted and turned to approach the water surface. This guy was probably here to hunt. He lowered his head and stared at the water surface. He looked for a long time but did not find a single fish. After being looted by the bad guys, the number of fish in the lake dropped sharply. The whole lake seemed to have been through a massacre. The surviving fish became frightened birds, extremely alert, and all hid underwater. The little guy stood alone in the shallow water for 7 or 8 minutes, his stomach growling with hunger, and he didn't even find a small hairfish. So hungry. Just when he was depressed, suddenly the instinct of the creature issued a warning, and a feeling of extreme danger came over him, and the feathers all over his body were frightened and exploded. It subconsciously raised its head and found that 2 two-legged beasts surrounded it silently at some point. The one in front of it had a sly smile on his face. Don't eat me, I'm just passing by. The little guy was scared. Su Ming's mental power enveloped it, and he said with a smile, oh, it turned out to be a little crested ibis. Don't be afraid, little friend, Uncle will give you a lollipop. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 647. The crested ibis, also known as the ibis or red ibis in ancient times, is a protected animal with a medium body size and white body feathers. Like the red-crowned crane, it has bright red head feathers and a touch of bright red at the top of its pointed bill. No wonder Su Ming admitted his mistake. The distance just now was too far to see clearly. After getting closer, in addition to the red tip of its mouth, we could also clearly see that the feathers on the back of its head looked like a willow leaf-shaped crest. This is the most distinctive feature of the crested ibis. The feathers on the back of its head are like a coquettish braid. Unexpectedly, I met the crested ibis in the Kinling Mountains. This animal is very rare. In the 1980s, there were only a few dozen wild crested ibis left. Later, after large-scale artificial breeding, the number gradually recovered, but the wild population is still very small. Few. The crested ibis not only has very high conservation value and ornamental value, but also has the longest history among birds in the world. It is known as the bird fairy. There are traces of crested ibis activities from 60 million years ago. In ancient China, people believed that the crested ibis could bring good luck, and regarded the crested ibis and the magpie as auspicious birds. The auspicious bird, the little crested ibis, looked at Su Ming pitifully. After coming into contact with his spiritual power, the little guy knew that Su Ming had no ill intentions. But it is still very hungry. Since the last time it found 2 groups of animals fighting by the river, its brains were knocked out. Then a group of 2-legged beasts came and looked for it by the river. I have been afraid to approach the river for a few days. I was really hungry today, so I mustered up the courage to risk my life and approach the river. Su Ming was right. Although this was not a juvenile red-crowned crane, it was indeed a juvenile crested ibis. Crested ibis's father, mother, brother, and sister have all been eaten by bad crocodiles in the lake in the past few years. Nature is like this. The food chain is linked by links, natural selection, and survival of the fittest. Each animal not only acts as a predator, but also plays the role of food. Freedom is not without price. On the contrary, if you want to enjoy true freedom, you must have the consciousness to pay for it with your life. Every animal has its own territory, even the weak ones. They have a fixed range of activities. Since this little crested ibis comes here to drink water, it means that it must live nearby. It is very dangerous in the mountains. There is absolutely no way that this little guy is just passing by. He has already become food for other animals along the way. So he had to ask what happened here, but seeing its pitiful appearance, Su Ming laughed and said, "The emperor has no shortage of hungry soldiers, let's eat first." The little crested ibis seemed to understand, and looked down at his feet in a depressed manner. There were no fish, what would he eat? In just 3 strokes, Su Ming stripped himself naked, even taking off his underwear, and was ready to go into the water to catch fish. Su Ming covered his face. "Brother, calm down. Have you made it a habit to take off your clothes recently?" A burst of mental power was spread into the water. There were no big fish in the lake, but there were still many small fish with long fingers. The mental power was like a big net, driving all the small fish towards the shore. After a while, the water at the feet of the little crested ibis began to boil, and densely packed small fish were scurrying back and forth in the shallow water. The little crested ibis flapped its wings happily, and with a little move of its head, it picked up a small fish, raised its neck, and a small bag bulged out and slid down the neck into the stomach. The little guy had big eyelids and a small belly. He was full after eating 4 or 5 small fish. He shook his head and waddled to Su Ming's feet. Okay, let's all go back." Su Ming relaxed and allowed the small fish gathered on the shore to leave. Now he has a little taste of what it feels like to be a Buddha. It is said that one day, when the Buddha was practicing in the mountains, a lame rabbit ran up and hid behind the Buddha. Immediately afterwards, an eagle fell from the sky and stared at the rabbit with eager eyes. The rabbit said, "Buddha, please save me, this bastard wants to eat me." The eagle said, "You can't say this. If I don't eat you, I will starve to death. It's up to you, Buddha. Either save the rabbit and let me starve to death, or let me eat the rabbit and it will live or die." Buddha touched his bald head, thought for a while, took out a small knife, and said with a smile, "I haven't had dinner yet, so I might as well kill you both and make barbecue for me." Eagle. Rabbit. "It's just a joke, don't mind." Buddha gritted his teeth, stabbed himself with a knife, pulled off a piece of thigh meat, handed it to the eagle, and said, "If you eat my meat, you don't have to eat rabbit." The legend of Buddha cutting meat to feed eagles. If there is a benefit, there will be a disadvantage. If you save a life, there will be a harm. This is the simplest and most direct law of nature. The reason why Buddha became a Buddha is because he has great compassion that ordinary people cannot understand. Su Ming didn't have such great mercy. He wouldn't cut off Su Ming's flesh or his own flesh to feed the little ibises, so he could only pity these unlucky little fishes. After eating and drinking, the little crested ibis began to explain the problems. In the past few days, not only the edge of the small lake where it lives, but also the nearby kindling mountains within a radius of dozens of kilometers have been in chaos. A group of uninvited guests broke into the peaceful kindling mountains and brutally plundered the animals in the mountains. Wherever they passed, they were like an unreasonable mudslide, sweeping away everything. Grab them all. Eat it all. If you resist even a little, you will be beaten as hard as a torrential rain. No matter whether you are male, female, old, or young, or whether you are protecting animals, they don't care at all. After eating and fighting, they still refuse to give up. They all gathered into their team like strong men and continued to move towards the next target. This is very painful for the indigenous animals in the Kinling Mountains. It's not that there are no powerful guys in the Kinling Mountains. On the contrary, in the depths of the Kinling Mountains, there are many beasts, such as bears, wild boars, leopards, tigers, gorillas, and monkeys. Any one of them is a fierce character who occupies the mountain and trembles the ground 3 times with a stomp of his feet and scare other animals within a dozen miles. But the problem is that the more ferocious the animal is, the more it will be alone. I have heard of sheep and wolf packs, but who has seen tiger packs and bear packs? Fierce animals have a strong sense of territory. Even their children will be driven out of the territory and survive independently after they grow up. So when facing foreign invaders, the local natives, who were scattered like a pile of sand, had almost no ability to resist and were caught off guard. Of course, there are also groups of guys like wolves, which are difficult to deal with. But that group of foreign animals seems to be very smart. They constantly recruit local animals and have a clear understanding of the situation in the Kinling Mountains. When they are not strong enough, they don't provoke the local big boss at all, and only attack the weaker ones. Gradually, the team grew larger, with more and more powerful generals and more complete arms. At this time, there was no opponent within 100 miles. The leaders of this group of animals were said to be 2 pandas that looked stupid, but once they approached, all the animals would subconsciously be afraid of these 2 guys, as if they saw a higher level of life. There were several backbone fighters in the team, led by a big brown bear. Every time they fought, they were so brutal. They grabbed the armadillo covered with iron armor and smashed it like a big iron ball. They could smash the opponent's head and bleed from a long distance. The animals in Kinling had never seen such a scene in their lives. It was too scary. Dodge, as far as you can. They ran around to tell each other. Hey, Mole, you haven't moved yet. I'm not afraid of anything, my home is underground, come down and hit me if you can. Stop talking nonsense, they have 2 pangolins. I'm moving today. Sika dear sister, aren't you leaving? I'm so good, so obedient, and so cute, they won't hurt me, right? You wish, those guys are so cruel. Yesterday, they beat the little yellow sheep on the opposite mountain to disability. They actually beat a woman. Woo woo woo, so scary. Brother Tiger, you're not at home, you're so cowardly, you've actually run away. According to the news from the crested ibis bird friends, the animals with a little intelligence nearby have either joined forces with this group of foreign animals or have run away. The little crested ibis also wanted to escape, but didn't know where to go. Of course, although the intelligence of the crested ibis is relatively high among birds, it is not able to communicate normally with humans. This information is all inferred by Su Ming based on many fragmentary fragments provided by the crested ibis, and it is almost the same as the truth. This is a disaster. Su Ming's eyelids were twitching. There is no doubt that the escaped animals did not kill each other, but instead dominated the Kinling Mountains and survived well. This is definitely the masterpiece of the 2 pandas. Animals that have come into contact with spiritual power, from a certain perspective, are no longer on the same level as ordinary animals. Putting animals that have come into contact with spiritual power back into the mountains is like putting an adult among a group of 7 or 8-year-old children. It is not difficult to become the boss and even rule all the local animals. It is just a matter of time. This was first proved by Grey Fang. It was just a young wolf, but it could already dominate the back mountain of the zoo. Several adult wolves from the depths of the mountains have joined its ranks. This was not too obvious in the back mountain of the zoo. The animals in the back mountain had more or less had some contact with Su Ming. But it was different in Kinling. The 2 giant pandas, like 2 big countries with modern armies, joined forces to attack a group of savages who still relied on swords and spears to fight. The result was no surprise. If we ignore them, won't these guys take a few years to unify kindling and become immortals in the mountains? Or build a country? Su Ming was a little unsure. He had only obtained spiritual power for more than a year. Who knows how far the animals that have come into contact with spiritual power can develop in the end. Fortunately, it seems that the pandas and the escaped animals will not be in great danger for the time being, but we still have to go and see before we can rest assured. He is relieved, but someone is not. The relevant departments of Yangchuan City learned from some channels that a transnational poaching group has set its sights on the escaped animals and may have smuggled into the country, carrying weapons and heading towards kindling. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 648. A group of rare animals from Xiangjiang Zoo, including 2 giant pandas of great significance, were lost near Yangchuan City. This news not only reached the ears of ordinary people, but also caught the eyes of many poachers. What kind of animals are valuable? Making money from animal organs is the lowest means. First, rare animals are definitely the most valuable. If there is only one left in the world, such as the white rhino in Africa, it is absolutely priceless. Second, whether the animal has additional value. There are too many local tyrants in the world, and these people can show off their wealth in various ways. You raise women, I raise tigresses, you raise tigresses, I raise pandas. See, this guy escaped from Xiangjiang Zoo and was brought here by me. Pandas are nothing, but the 2 in my cellar are gifts from the Chinese mainland to Xiangjiang, and they are of great significance. The group of animals that escaped just have these 2 characteristics. And there are many places in the world where there are animals, but it is rare to gather so many rare animals from different regions at one time with a clear goal. In fact, a wealthy man in the Middle East has already opened a betting. Among these animals, there are more than a dozen that are worth more than $1 million. The bounty for 2 pandas has reached $3 million. If both can be obtained, it will be $10 million. This group of evil animals with money but nowhere to spend it? Ordinary poachers certainly dare not risk the world's greatness and go deep into the hinterland of China to poach these animals. But large poaching organizations have set their sights on this piece of fat meat. Park Genji, a South Korean, has been active on the China-South Korea border for many years and is an internationally famous animal smuggler. A big poacher, he has people and guns under his command, and has close contacts with poachers in Russia and northeast China. Some things are traditional. Park Genji's family has a history of dealing with animals that can be traced back to the beginning of the last century, when China was still a feudal society. Park Genji's grandfather's grandfather was a famous hunter in. Although they were both hunters, Park Genji's ancestors did not rely on hunting for meat or selling animal fur for money. His main job was to capture various rare animals for the princes and nobles of the time. To put it nicely, he was a royal hunter. In the words of the Chinese at that time, it was offering, which was to provide wild animals for the gardens of the royal family and the great nobles. From that time on, the Park family had close contacts with the nobles of Tsarist Russia and the 8 banners stationed in the northeast of the Qing dynasty. Later, Japan invaded and Korea became a colony. Park Genji's family did not hesitate or had no other choice to join the Japanese colonial government at that time. Dog fighting and horse racing and animal husbandry, there is a market in any era, especially the Japanese occupiers at that time vigorously promoted the spirit of Bushido. In order to demonstrate the bravery and martial spirit of the empire, they captured a large number of wild animals for breeding. Therefore, after being occupied, the Park family's business expanded a lot. Even the military government at that time set up a special East Asian Rare Species Research Institute, in which Park Genji's ancestors served as important positions in the action department, specializing in capturing all kinds of rare birds and animals. Strictly speaking, The real rise of the Park family began from that era. Every nation in the world has its own characteristics, or bad roots. But there are few people like the Yamato people, who are full of a combination of deep inferiority and arrogance. Two completely different characteristics develop in two extreme directions in one person's body, and the final result can only be madness. The island country is small in area and poor in resources. In order to show the demeanor of the first power in Greater East Asia, many of the rare animals captured by the Species Research Institute were sent to the island country. At the same time, the Species Research Institute also undertook a secret mission, to exterminate the rare animal populations living in the occupied country. In this way, the rare animal populations of other countries tend to die out, and only the animals sent to the island country will reproduce and thrive. Then after several years, this kind of creature will be unique to the island country, showing the demeanor of a great power. The land is small but rich in resources, and there are many animals. Park Genji's ancestors, in addition to hunting animals, often secretly slaughtered animals on a large scale through various inhumane means. Outsiders only know about Park Genji's family, a family that has been hunting animals for generations, and a family that once worked for the colonial government like many local officials. After the war, Park Genji's family was put on trial, and the ancestor who served as an important person in charge of the Species Research Institute was shot, and the entire Park family quickly disappeared from the public's view. But the Park family did not decline, but went underground. Park Genji's father and grandfather, relying on the skills passed down by the family, the resource information accumulated by many ancestors, and various connections at home and abroad, resumed their old business and started smuggling animals. After the war, all industries were waiting to be developed, and no one had the time to pay attention to a poaching group. The locals who were in distress did not have the awareness of protecting animals. The Park family actually made a lot of money by smuggling animals, especially rare animals, in just a few years. Although the Park family was still hidden from the public due to World War II, they were already a powerful family in the local area. Later, a civil war broke out. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the Park family made a lot of money again, and even connected with buyers in many Western countries, and expanded the animal smuggling business to all parts of the world. Since the 1980s, as the world's civilization process accelerated, civilized countries paid more and more attention to animal protection, and the Park family's income also rose, becoming the largest poaching group and animal smuggler in South Korea, and completely realized the family's revival. Now the Park family's business on the surface is a dog meat chain store, which has branches in several major cities in South Korea. The scale is not large. But the real insiders know that the behind-the-scenes bosses of these stores control more than 35% of animal smuggling in East Asia. Mr. Park Genji, Mr. Park Youngming has been waiting for you inside for a long time. Please. A chef-like man opened the door of the innermost box of the dog meat shop with a smile on his face and bent down to greet Park Genji. Park Genji is in his early 40s this year, wearing a neat suit and carrying a black bag. He is gentle and refined, with a few crow's feet at the corners of his eyes caused by the pressure of life. At first glance, he looked no different from the white-collar workers who hurriedly walked on the street, but his face looked more resolute. It can be seen that this is a very decisive man. Uncle, is the dog meat fresh today? Park Genji took off his shoes and smiled at the chef. Don't leave the best dog meat for the guests just to make money and ignore me. Haha, I specially kept a 6-month-old black dog. I didn't use a knife, but suffocated it with water to let the blood flow into the muscles. I will definitely satisfy you, the chef said with a smile. Then thank you for your hard work. Park Genji nodded slightly, walked into the box, and closed the door with his backhand. There was already a person sitting in the box. When he saw Park Genji coming, he stood up and bowed deeply. Brother, you are here. This person looks about 70% similar to Park Genji, but he is shorter and looks younger, only in his 30s. Park Genji's twin brother, Park Youngming. Sit down, don't be polite to me. Park Genji nodded. Park Youngmyeong did not sit down immediately, but stood by the side. After his brother sat down, he sat down opposite him, picked up a glass of wine for Park Genji, and said, "Brother, I haven't seen you for a long time. Cheolbin misses you as his uncle very much." "Haha, I miss him too. If I didn't have something important to say today, I would have asked you to bring him here." "That won't work. Cheolbin hates people eating dog meat the most." Park Youngmyeong laughed. Speaking of this smart and prodigy-like little Cheolbin, Park Youngmyeong, the father, and Park Genji, the uncle, both showed deep pride and love on their faces. Alas, it's a pity that the invasion of Western civilization is too deep. Young people have forgotten their traditions and regard their own national traditions as barbaric behavior. It really makes me sad. "Animals are the food given to humans by the gods," Park Genji said. Park Youngmyeong smiled, probably not wanting to argue with his brother on this issue. The two chatted about family matters for a while. Although Park Genji never got married and had no offspring, like all traditional Koreans, he attached great importance to family values. This younger brother and his son Park Cheolbin had an irreplaceable position in his mind. Not long after, the chef knocked on the door and brought in a pot of hot dog meat, 4 small plates of exquisite kimchi, and a pot of wine, then turned around and left the box and closed the door again. "It smells so good. Dog meat must be boiled in plain water and dipped in the sauce from my hometown. This is the best way to cook it," Park Genji said intoxicatedly. "Eat it quickly, this is a good dog." Park Youngming didn't seem to have much appetite. He hesitated for a while and finally said, "Brother, do you have to go to China?" "Of course, this is the business we rely on for survival." Park Genji picked up a large piece of dog ribs, rolled it twice in the onion and garlic dipping sauce, and stuffed it into his mouth to eat it. While eating, he said without raising his head, "Don't worry about family matters, I will take care of it. You just need to run these dog meat shops well and raise Jibin well." "But, brother," since he opened his mouth, Park Youngming couldn't help it and continued, "Brother, you have made a lot of money over the years. Even if you don't use this money, the annual income of these dog meat shops alone exceeds 1 billion won, and half of these shops are yours. If you are willing to come and run it with me, we can definitely expand the scale." 1 billion won, Park Genji wiped his mouth with a napkin, put down his chopsticks, looked up at his brother calmly, and asked lightly, "Is it a lot?" Stared at by Park Genji, Park Youngmin lowered his head slightly, bit his lips, and said in a trembling voice, "If it weren't for Jibin's illness, this money would be enough for us." Dividing line. There will be less updates these 2 days, so let a few classmates entertain. Speaking of which, there are 5 female classmates among the 6 people who came. Am I so popular with women? The problem is that they are all married. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 649. Park Genji hummed and continued to eat dog meat. While eating, he said, "Youngming, you are a father and a husband. How can you watch your son being paralyzed in a wheelchair for the rest of his life? Your wife, shed tears for the rest of your life." But, when talking about his son's illness, Park Youngming, who is quite experienced in shopping malls, trembled. "It's impossible to find out what is causing his illness. No matter how much money is spent, it may not be cured." "Well done. That's why we want to make more money." Park Genji interrupted his brother, "We have all gone through half of our lives, and Jibin's life has just blossomed. He is not yet 18 years old. As technology continues to develop, maybe one day, there will be a cure for his disease." Technology. We may not see that day, but Jibin is very young. If he waits for that day and cannot be treated because he does not have enough money, I will not feel at ease even if he is buried underground. Is this really going to happen again? Pu Yingming said in a daze. Looking at this younger brother who is actually a little weak at heart, but always pretends to be strong and acts as a solid arm for his son and woman, Park Genji's heart softens. He pours a glass of wine for his younger brother, pats him on the shoulder, and slows down. Tone, said, even if that day does not exist, we must make enough money to ensure that after we die, Jibin can live a relatively comfortable life in this world. Brother, over the years, you and your father have made too many sacrifices for the family. Don't say that, Yingming, you have to remember that it is a man's duty to support a family. If we can't even do this, we will lose our face and meaning as men. Park Genji picked up a piece of dog leg meat, dipped it in the sauce, and brought it to his mouth. He did not eat it immediately, but put it on a small plate aside. I hope that the sins in the hands of our PU family will be completely ended starting from my generation. From now on, Jibin can live happily under the sun, even if he is in a wheelchair, he will not have to worry about panic and guilt every night, Park Genji said. No, brother, hunting animals is not a sin, it's just illegal. Your contribution to the family is by no means something that so-called kind people are qualified to criticize morally. Park Yingming shook his head decisively. That's not what I'm talking about. Park Genji pointed to his chest, looked up at the national flag hanging in the box, and said with some seriousness, in order to survive, our ancestors did a lot of wrong things. These things can I understand, but that doesn't mean I can forgive. If you do something wrong, you should pay the price even for survival. Jibin's illness may be the price for the PU family's betrayal of their motherland. Park Youngmyung was speechless. If you say that your son's illness is retribution for your treason, this statement is a bit idealistic. But in real life, most of the various invisible obstacles to his career were caused by the crimes of his ancestors. Although decades have passed, the information from that year can still be found. The Park family has a notorious reputation as a traitor, and it is difficult no matter what they do. With just a little research, the Park family's crimes during World War II can be discovered. It is difficult for any enterprise to be approved by the government. After all, the impact must be considered, and whether it is business or politics, as long as the competitors are slightly deeper. If you dig up information about the PU family and throw out the word traitor, the PU family will have no power to fight back. Even some of Park Genji's powers can only be used to deal with animals and cannot be used to deal with people. As a descendant of a Korean trader and traitor, any bad news will lead to strict investigation and beating by the police. The Park family is not poor, and Park Genji is very powerful, but in South Korea, he can only live an extremely low-key life, and it is not an exaggeration to say that he is walking on thin ice. With gold bricks in his possession, he lives like a beggar. Okay, brother, hurry up and sign this document. If nothing else happens, we will be able to drink together again in 2 months. Park Genji took out a document from his black leather bag and pushed it to Park Yingming, smiling. He said, of course, we will definitely not meet here then. We will take Jibin to eat pizza. Every time before Park Genji undertakes a task that has a certain risk, he and his brother will sign a document, agreeing that if he dies or disappears for more than 6 months, all the assets in his name will be inherited by his younger brother Park Yingming. After seeing a large list of deposit figures, stocks, and real estate information on the document, Park Yingming frowned slightly, his hands trembled a little, and he signed at the bottom of the document. Okay, I'm going to get ready. Park Genji laughed and patted his brother on the shoulder again. Relax a little. I firmly believe that the bloodline of the Park family will not be cut off. After saying that, he tugged on a rope on the wall that was connected to the bell outside. Not long after, the old chef came in with a smile and brought a packed casserole. While putting on his shoes, Park Genji said with a smile, "Brother, Do you know why I love you so much? Haha, because you have never liked eating dog meat since you were a child, and you have never competed with me for meat, haha, it's really worth remembering. Childhood. Pu Yingming shrugged and said aggrievedly, who said that? Because when I was a child, I was not as strong as you and couldn't beat you. And both my mother and father took care of the eldest son in the family. Mr. Park Genji, it's packed. The chef smiled and handed the casserole to Park Genji with both hands. Thank you. Park Genji nodded slightly and snapped his fingers at his brother. So, I owe you since I was a child, and now it's my turn to take care of you. Brother, don't think too much, wait for me to come back. Brother, you must take care of yourself. Park Yingming stood up and bowed deeply. After leaving the dog meat restaurant, Park Genji walked alone on the crowded street, and quickly blended into the white-collar people coming and going, and there was almost no difference. In addition to economic factors, there was another more important reason for his decision to go to China and Qinling Mountains to attack the batch of animals. This reason involves an unexplainable secret, which he doesn't want to tell anyone, and he is even prepared to take the secret to his coffin when he dies. Starting from his great-grandfather, the Park family only passed on the skills related to hunting to the eldest son and grandson, and the other branches were engaged in other professions. Therefore, this secret was only known by Park Genji himself. When his great-grandfather was a senior executive of the so-called Species Research Institute, he was once sent to the Qinling Mountains in China to capture rare animals. As a result, he encountered a very mysterious incident. A small team of fully armed soldiers and a dozen hunters who went with him all died, leaving only his great-grandfather alive. His great-grandfather did not tell anyone about the situation at the time, and did not even describe it in detail to his descendants. But the ancestors who inherited his great-grandfather's mantle at the time judged from a few words that there was a mysterious power in the Qinling Mountains. Perhaps with the help of this mysterious power, his nephew Park Cheolban's illness can be cured. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 650. The legend of the Park family has been passed down from generation to generation among the eldest sons of the family for nearly a century. Because the original parties, for some reason, perhaps did not want their families to be involved, they were always vague and unwilling to talk about it in detail. But the family always has a few words. After nearly a century, no one can figure out the truth at the beginning. I don't know whether this power really exists or what it is. After a long time, Park Genji himself didn't believe it, thinking that this was probably just a legend to add mystery to the family. Under normal circumstances, Park Genji might not pay attention to this legend himself, but since his nephew Park Jiban was paralyzed in the lower body for no reason, and no medical technology could find the cause, Park Genji suddenly remembered this legend. For safety reasons, he even went around several bends and found a relatively famous poaching organization in Africa, and paid a high price for them to send people to Qinling to investigate. As a result, the other party's people never returned, and they were not seen alive or dead. It just so happened that this animal escape happened in Qinling Mountains, so Park Genji decided to go there by himself. Walking through the most prosperous Gangnam district, he pushed open the door of a small bar on the corner. The bar was deserted, with only one customer, who was drunk and sleeping on the table. A glass of strong liquor. Park Genji sat at the bar, smiled at the bartender, and handed over a 1 yuan Korean won. Gangnam district is a wealthy area, and the bars here must be expensive. The Korean won is very worthless. 1 Korean won is worth about 0.6 cents in Chinese currency. In such a place, tens of thousands of Korean won may not be enough for a glass of wine. Park Genji actually gave 1 Korean won? The bartender did not get angry. He picked up the coin, looked at the minting date on the back, and whistled, "Wow, it's from 1999." His attitude immediately became respectful. "Sir, what quality of liquor do you want?" "The highest quality." "How many cups?" Specific brand? How to drink? 5. The echo of nature, packaged to drink abroad. Do you want ice? Big ice cubes or small ice cubes? Park Genji laughed. Young man, you still need to ask this. Oh, I understand. Since you are going abroad, big ice cubes are definitely not suitable, so let's use small ice cubes. The bartender scratched his head, took a step back, and bowed deeply. Thank you for your support and guidance. After a strange conversation, Park Genji recruited 5 professional poachers with small caliber weapons. After Park Genji left the dog meat shop, Park Youngming sat alone in the box, staring at the property transfer agreement in his hand for a long time. The chef, who had a friendly face, was already quite old with a head full of silver gray hair, but was very strong, was not busy in the kitchen, but had been accompanying him in the box, never leaving. If I decide to do it? Park Youngmin suddenly raised his head, stared at the chef, lowered his voice, and asked word by word, how sure are you? When facing Park Genji, the lack of confidence and weakness on his face had disappeared, replaced by a fierceness. The chef narrowed his eyes, as if he was weighing, and seemed to be distracted. If I fight hard, I am not sure, but if I do it secretly, Mr. Park Genji will be caught off guard. I am more than 90% sure. The chef nodded. Park Young-myung took a deep breath, his facial muscles twitched, as if he had made a big choice. He slammed the table hard and said with gritted teeth, then do it? The chef did not immediately respond, but said calmly, my life is yours. Even if you ask me to fight hard, I will not hesitate. But this time, boss, is it worth it? Mr. Park Genji is your brother, and he treats you like his own son. Besides, although he has a lot of property, you may not be able to surpass him in your lifetime. Park Young-myung took a sip of wine, his face flushed, and he almost growled, Sakata-kun, do you think I want to kill him for my brother's property? The relationship between Chef Sakata and Park Young-myung is extraordinary. He is a loyal dog and a close friend, and he doesn't care too much when talking. He smiled and said, this fortune is enough for a most filial son to kill his father with his own hands. A kindest woman betrays her husband. No, it's not what you think. Park Young-myung seemed to be defending himself, and explained with a red neck, my respect and love for my brother is no less than his for me. Sakata nodded and motioned him to continue. Having grown up with the young master, Sakata, the killer, knew the young master's character very well, and knew that it must be very difficult for him to make such a decision. If he didn't create an opportunity for him to speak out his heart, he would suffocate to death. But I love my son more. Park Young-myung drank bitter wine, maybe it's really retribution. My brother is born infertile. My sperm quality is too low. It's a miracle that I can give birth to Cheol-bin. What my brother said is not wrong at all. We must make enough money for Cheol-bin. Even if we can't cure Cheol-bin, we must let Cheol-bin live his life in the sun, instead of carrying the stigma of a traitor's descendant and being ridiculed. Sakata continued to nod. He knew that the young master hadn't finished speaking. Park Young-ming only drank a few glasses of wine, but he seemed to be very drunk. How to make money? Does my brother really think that he can make a lot of money by relying on the illegal business he engages in? No. Only legitimate business, only in this way can I make more money, legal money, so that little Jibin will not have to worry about confiscated money for the rest of his life. But if I want to expand my business, my brother is my biggest obstacle. As long as he exists, the government police will keep an eye on me. The size of the dog meat shop has reached its limit, and I really have no way to make the restaurant business bigger. If I can expose him, expose a descendant of a traitor who continues to engage in a shady and illegal business, this will prove it. I am a law-abiding businessman, which proves that I have contributed to this country. On the positive side, the Park family has really changed their minds. only then can the catering business expand and the stain left by our ancestors be truly washed away. Descendants of traitors. Sakata repeated the sentence. Yes. Descendants of traitors, ha 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 ha. A descendant of a traitor, in order to prove that he is patriotic, exposes the descendants of another traitor, ha ha ha, it's so ridiculous. Park Young-ming spoke louder and louder. Fortunately, the store was closed and he would not be heard by the third person. He seemed a little crazy, banging the table desperately, tears and snot mixed on his face. And you, Sakata-kun, you also betrayed your motherland. You are obviously a Japanese, but you have been a Korean for decades. My ancestors lived in order to survive, and you did it for bullshit love, ha ha ha, ha ha ha, you actually fell in love with my mother, ha ha, so funny, we are both traitors, what a perfect partner. Everyone has a story that can be written into a book. Looking at the little master who was about to get really drunk, a smiling woman's face appeared in Sakata-kun's mind, and the smile on his face became more real. For the sake of her younger son, she killed her eldest son just because of what the woman said before she died. Yang-ming has a weak character and has suffered a lot of injustice since childhood. I am very sorry for him. Please, Sakata-kun, please help me take care of him. Are you sure you want to do this? Sakata-kun stood up, put on that mask-like smile, and asked Park Young-ming for the last time. Sure. Sure, every word was like a big mountain. After saying these 3 words, Park Young-ming was suddenly emptied of energy, relieved of a mountainous burden, but also lost the last of his strength. Lying on the ground with his back facing the sky, looking at the ceiling with empty eyes. Go ahead and let my brother leave happily. After Pu Young-ming said this, he closed his eyes, not wanting to say another word. Sakata nodded, stood up, adjusted the air conditioner in the room to a suitable temperature, walked out of the box, and gently closed the door of the box. Little master, although I don't agree with your idea, in order to fulfill my promise, I will completely kill Mr. Park Genji for you, both mentally and physically. In this way, your family should be able to survive without any worries. Looking at the private room door, Sakata muttered to himself, then turned around and walked towards the dark passage in front of the 2 rows of private rooms. At the same time that Park Genji left the country, the relevant South Korean authorities received a mysterious letter of report. The so-called mystery means that for the grassroots personnel, the real high-level people know the source of this report letter. The relevant departments of the Korean side are not completely ignorant of what Park Genji has done over the years, but his hands and feet are so clean that he did not leave any evidence, leaving the Korean side at a loss. The South Korean side immediately contacted the relevant parties in China. As long as he can be caught poaching protected animals on the spot, Park Genji will definitely be convicted and sentenced. A few days later, Mr. Sakata, the head chef of the dog meat restaurant, submitted a letter of resignation, saying that he was old and hoped to travel around the world while he was still healthy, so that wherever he goes in the future, he would be at home. On the surface, the relationship with Park Young-ming is completely broken off. There was no evidence that Park Genji was poaching and selling animals before. Even if he was caught this time, he would only be sentenced to a few years at best. It can only be said that his business was completely destroyed. But as a younger brother, Park Young-ming knows this brother too well. This is a man with a clear sense of grudges and grievances, as fierce as fire. After he was released from prison and figured everything out, brotherly love could not save his life. Therefore, in order for his son to live happily in the sun, and in order for him to live with his son, his brother must die. Segmentation. Is it popular now to fall in love and kill each other?